Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today this isn't really a regular video. It's kind of something I just wanted to talk about because as you can see over here, which is kind of light but I will show you in a second, the Skyline is finally finished being wrapped and it is good to go. So we're gonna swap to a quick montage and show you around the car. So you've decided you want to wrap your car, you want to change the color of your car, or you put a kit on the car and now you have two different colors and you want to kind of make it more symmetrical and overall better looking. And I know wrap is kind of becoming this big thing, and there's a ton of videos for that car. There's a ton of videos showing you how to wrap cars better than how I could show you, so that's why I'm not really talking about how to wrap a car, more of my experience with doing the wrap and kind of things that went wrong, how much I paid, things that you should be wary of, things like that, stuff I learned generally. And overall, it's definitely way cheaper than just going to a shop and getting it wrapped. Obviously, I think I paid $1,000 for material, and I opted for 3M 20 series, which is apparently the best for DIY. I had a really good time with it. I wrapped my old STI with the cheapest material I could find. It was like 500 bucks, and it was terrible. It was so much harder to work with. It was way thicker and tougher to really adhere to the car and get the shape that I want without creasing the wrap. So definitely go for the 20 series of the 3M. I think the 20 series for the 3M worked really well. I've heard Avery does a really good job with their wraps, and that it's very easy to use, especially for first timers. But I will say it is extremely time consuming. Even if you're kind of good with your hands, like I consider myself pretty artistic, I can draw and I'm good at, working with my hands, but wrap is just a totally different game, and it's difficult, especially if you're working by yourself with someone who hasn't really done this before. It's tough, and there is a learning curve. So, trying to just jump right into it saying, oh, I can do it in a weekend, it's not going to happen. It took me 2 weeks to do half the car, and at that point I gave up because honestly I was like, I don't have time for this, I'm just going to get someone else to do it. So what I ended up doing was doing most of the bigger, flatter sections, so like all the doors, the roof, the hood, I did myself, and then I took it to someone I found on Instagram who has been working out of his garage trying to get into the wrap business himself, and he finished off the bumpers, the side skirts, and some of the other smaller pieces that I wasn't super comfortable with doing, especially front bumpers like this with all the different curves, and kind of having to layer it a couple times was a bit of a challenge for me, and I didn't feel like just sitting there for 2 days doing the bumper. And so I think I paid him about $1,000. So overall I spent $2,000 getting this car wrapped, which is still way cheaper. If you go to a shop and you get it quoted, it's about 4 or 5, depending on material and color and all that stuff. So honestly, not too bad. If you do decide to do it yourself, it's your second car, and you're willing to you have the time to just put into it and spend your days wrapping, then it's definitely worth it, and it's a good experience to be able to say, oh, I learned how to wrap a car, and every now and then doing trim pieces makes it so much easier because you already know how to do it. So definitely a skill that's extremely useful and is fun and just a little time consuming and has a bit of a learning curve. One of the main things that I learned from the 2 cars that I wrapped is that material is extremely important. Don't skimp out on the material. You're already saving money by not taking it to a shop. You might as well spend a little bit more on material and really make it easy for yourself in the long run. Plus, they will hold up longer, they have a better adhesive backing and will stay on your car for longer and do a better job protecting your original paint. Another thing that I learned being in the heat of Arizona, I'd say it was about 100 degrees when I was wrapping the roof, and I was struggling, especially because I was doing it myself. If I had a couple people, putting down the whole sheet with me, then it might have been a little bit easier, but I'll insert a clip of me just struggling to just try to get the piece down. And actually it was so hot outside that after I took the sheet out and started laying it down, it was like there was a heat gun to the entire panel, and it was just slowly like melting to the hood and creating its own creases. So definitely don't do it in too hot of an environment. Probably not great to do it in too cold of an environment either. You probably want it to be around like 60 to 80 degrees, if that's a pretty wide range, but 70 is probably the best, just so it's a little bit flexible, but not so flexible that you're just absolutely losing control of where the wrap's going. That's something that I learned pretty early on, was to make sure I had shade and it wasn't too hot and the material was in its right working temperature. So that's something big that I learned when working with wrap. Another major thing is make sure you clean all your surfaces. Probably the best to just go get your car detailed before you start the wrap process, just to make sure everything's clean. I clay barred my entire car before I started this, or I just did panel by panel. I'd clean a panel, clay bar it, make sure it's as clean as possible, wipe it down with alcohol, and then wrap that panel, move to the next one. This is just to make sure your paint's in the best condition before you wrap it, just to preserve your paint for one. It also means there aren't little like bumps and dirt underneath, and that can cause little ripples in your wrap. So it's definitely something that you want to make sure you do. Cleaning your car before you start wrapping it is extremely important, especially if you want it to come out nice and to preserve your paint. So I didn't personally wrap the bumpers, but the guy I sent it off to was actually really smart, because I would not have done this. He got, I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was wood finish, just like super glossy finish that you put down, because these are fiberglass bumpers, so they're not smooth and glossy like the paint is. They're rough, and if you put wrap straight on fiberglass pieces, you're going to have a hard time with adhesion, and it's not going to be as shiny and smooth as when it's finished. So definitely make sure you're using some sort of lacquer, or I don't know what exactly it is. I will double check and I will write it right here. But there's some sort of finish that you need to put on your bumpers before you start wrapping them, just so you have a good finish and good adhesion. Another thing that's sometimes overlooked when doing wrapping is the shape of your car. So something that you want to take into account, the Skyline is pretty smooth. There's no like crazy sharp bends or anything, but on my old Subaru STI, like the front fenders are sharp and pointed, and it just made it way harder to wrap. So if it is your first time wrapping, the shape of the car matters. If you have a lot of sharp bends and your bumpers are like crazy complex, then it's obviously going to be much harder to start. So something I'd recommend would be to at least start with the smoothest panels that you have. Granted, the bigger the panel sometimes can be trickier, but starting with things like doors or a trunk lid, and just getting the feel for wrap and making sure that you're comfortable using the material and you know where its breaking points are, that's something that's really important. Especially if you're going to move on to something like mirrors and try to get those really complex little curves and points and trying to make sure it looks clean. Definitely save the hardest pieces for last. Even though it may take you longer to get there, by the time you do, you'll be more rehearsed and more able to make it look clean. So that was just a quick overview of my experience with wrap. I know it wasn't a very long video, but I hope it was just informative. I just wanted to get my opinion out there and share with you guys what I've learned from wrapping cars, even though I don't have a ton of experience. That's why I didn't make a how-to video. It's more of, is it worth it for you? And if you feel like, yeah, I can take on the job of wrapping and I want to learn and I want to put in the time, and you have the time to put in, I would definitely say go for it. It's really fun to learn. It's a good experience, and definitely just take your time. The more you rush trying to wrap something, the worse it's going to come out. So don't expect to be able to hop into wrapping your first time and just be able to finish a car in a weekend, because it's not that easy. People who are wrapping in shops are charging so much because it's a skill. Like, it takes a while to learn, and being able to pump out cars in a week or in weekends is incredible. Like, I don't know how they're doing that. So definitely don't expect yourself to, you know, wrap a car in even a week. It's gonna take you a while unless you're just like naturally skilled. So definitely something that's fun to learn, and I would definitely recommend doing it. Just make sure you have the time and you're willing to commit and actually get your car where you want it. Because a lot of the times I've noticed I'll end up getting frustrated and just trying to get through it, and then I'll end up creasing it, and you know, it just makes it worse. So take your time, be patient, and you know, it's a great way to do it. Great way to change the color of your car without spending a ton of money and getting the whole thing painted. So I definitely recommend it. I hope this video helped and that you guys can go learn to wrap. Thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed all that stuff.